Welcome to Dad Talk Today. The podcast for dads facing some of the toughest moments of their lives. We are here to walk with men through divorce, keep them connected to their kids, help them understand their rights, and work for change in family law courts. Moms, you are always welcome too. We are all about advocating for shared parenting and doing what is best for our kids. Here is your host, Eric Carroll.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Dad Talk Today. I'm joined tonight with Melissa Isaac, and boy, do we got a story for you tonight that's got many twists and turns. Michael Lazarin is here at the podcast. Michael, how you doing?
Good, Eric. How are you? Hopefully you could hear me.
Yeah, man, we got you here, brother. So Michael has a case. Guys, I don't know if you've seen the documentary. It was on Netflix. I think it's about 3-4 years old. It was called Audrie and Daisy. Audrie Pott was a 15-year-old girl that had committed suicide. And watching this documentary, I remember watching it when it came out. It was an international story. And watching that documentary, I saw what I thought was the father until earlier this week. I talked to Michael and found out there's a little bit of a twist to that. Michael, could you tell everybody a little bit about what's going on?
Well, where do you want me to start? Do you want me to start from, wow, this is a long story, so there's a lot of twists and turns. My daughter's film came out in 2016. Netflix bought the rights to the film for 2 years, I believe, for $10 million. The story is absolutely, completely false. I've been in litigation now since 2016. The Pott family actually hit me with, I believe, 6 lawsuits to try to silence me, both in family court and civil court. So I won the 5 prior lawsuits, anywhere ranging from stalking to desecrating my own daughter's grave to anything you could possibly imagine that you could sue somebody for. They sued me to basically drain my financial resources and keep me silent because of the movie coming out. So I had a press conference in 2016 where I actually was looking at changing legislation. I had Nora Campos, one of the state legislators from the state of California, going to sponsor my bill. I did a press conference at City Hall in San Jose where I displayed a picture of my daughter. And the Pott family went and registered my daughter's name, image, and likeness with the state of California, and basically hit me with a lawsuit called the Fred Astaire Celebrity Act, which is 344.1, stating that I cannot use my own biological daughter's name, image, and likeness. And I counter that lawsuit, and I hit them with an anti-SLAPP lawsuit under 425.16, which is First Amendment speech rights. You cannot stop. One of the most protected speeches that you could have is when you're trying to change legislation and law. So they finally made that mistake, and I filed the anti-SLAPP lawsuit. I've been in litigation with that now for going on 3 years. I originally won the lawsuit in the superior court level. I ended up drawing a bad card. I drew a card of a judge that was involved in my daughter's civil lawsuit when this story was going international, and obviously nobody wanted. Nobody wanted to hear my side of the story because it was going to disturb the dialogue that was sold both by, at that time, our Senator Bill, our state senator, sponsored a law, the first cyberbullying law in the country called Audrie's Law. And so they, I was getting hit from all aspects trying to silence me. I basically had to go to the Sixth Circuit, Sixth District Court of Appeals. I did that about 2 years ago, and I got I went in front of the justices in January, and they actually overturned the Superior Court's decision and ruled in my favor. And it was a precedent case. There's never been a case in the United States, case law at all, that you ever had Fred Astaire Celebrity Act, which is basically protecting Michael Jackson and Prince and all these they were basically saying my daughter was a celebrity and that I couldn't use her name, image, and likeness, that going against the First Amendment speech. So January, we litigated in front of the justices. I received notification that they did rule in my favor in February. And then just recently we hit COVID, and then the Pott family basically appealed to the California Supreme Court. And I just received the denial and won my case as of last Wednesday. So I've been in litigation now since 2002 when they took my daughter from me. So it's been 19 years.
So before I ask you this question, Michael, I want everybody to get a good look at the man on the screen. I want you to notice the eyes, the skin tone, and everything. And I'm going to show you a picture of Audrie. This is her right here.
Looks just like her.
Looks just like you. But to my knowledge, have you never got to have a paternity test, did you, Michael?
No. So in 2002, I'll give you this case has so many twists and turns in it.
Right.
I was involved with Audrie's mother for a total of 9 years, and I just moved to the Bay Area and here from Arizona. I'm originally from Arizona. Met Sheila Pott. When I met her at a restaurant bar. We dated for about 6 months. And at that time, she was going through an extensive divorce from her husband of 11 years, Larry Pott. So I'm Catholic. My parents have been married. My mom passed away just this last year, but my parents have been married 60 years. Just never dated anybody in my entire life that was physically still technically married. So I left the relationship, stating, once it's finalized, we could get back into our relationship. So I left the relationship and moved on with my life. I ended up finding out, probably a year later, ironically, as soon as I left the relationship, Sheila moved back to her husband of 11 years in Los Altos. So a year goes by, she was pregnant, and I had some tickets that I had for Vegas and flights that were already paid for that were going to expire. So I called her office, and then her assistants basically told me that she's out on maternity leave, which I was floored because I knew that gut instinct that it was my daughter. So I reached out to Sheila's mom, Sheila's mom, the grandmother, or Sheila's mom, and she basically told me that, that Sheila had a baby girl and it was not mine, and that was it. So 5 months later, I get a call. Audrie's 5 months old. I get a call from Sheila stating that she's fed up with the abusive. She was in a very, very bad marriage, abusive, and all avenues that you could imagine. And I met her at her place in San Francisco, and she basically told me, let me see Audrie for the first time. So I didn't know I had a daughter until my daughter was 5 months old. So from 5 months old, we became a family. I was with Sheila and her mom. I, took everything. We had separate households. She lived in Los Altos. I lived in the Rose Garden in San Jose. And so from the 5 months till Audrey was 7 years old, we acted as a family in every way you could possibly imagine. I raised my daughter. I potty trained my daughter. I did her laundry. I did everything that any loving father would do for his daughter. Yeah. So fast forward December 12th, 2002, every year me and my daughter would trim a Christmas tree at my house, and I was trimming the tree with my daughter. And then she started telling me all these disturbing things, that her mom was taking her to some other man's house, and that they have 3 kids. He has 3 kids that she doesn't like. And that's when I found out. Right, it was right before Christmas that her mom was basically seeing another man, and it wasn't Larry Pott. It was her boss at the bank. And it just so happens that she was at her company Christmas party, and she called me about 1:00 in the morning, extremely intoxicated, telling me she's coming to pick up Audrie. And I was like, "You come to my house, I'm calling the police on you. You are not picking up my daughter intoxicated." And then I told her, Audrie told me everything that was going on, and I just told her, come Monday morning, I'm going to hire the best family law attorney I could afford, and that I'm going to fight for joint custody of my daughter. Well, the next day, it was a Sunday, Sheila shows up with her new boyfriend at my house. So she was already trying to provoke me to get into a physical. At that time, I had no idea of the silver bullet. I had no idea of anything, but she was already trying to set the stages up for me to basically take me down that aisle, which I didn't do.
Right.
So I went into family court, fought for my daughter, spent my entire life savings. I spent between $200,000 and $250,000 over a 4-year period, and ended up finding out that in the state of California, you only have 2 years of statutes of limitations in order to do DNA testing. So when I went to my attorney, I told him, he goes, I got to pull her divorce file. So when he went to go to the divorce file, he calls me and just frantic and tells me, come to my office, it's very important. So he sat me down and he threw a file out to me, and it was a file with just one piece of paper in it. It was just a legal separation. So the entire time that I was the 9 years I was with Audrie's mom, there was never a divorce. It was all fabricated. So, and he told me we're in trouble. So I find out in the state of California, you only have 2 years in statutes of limitations in order to do DNA testing. And he told me I had less than a 50% chance to win and get custody of my daughter. And I said, well, 50% is better than no percent. So went through the whole thing of years of litigation in family court. The judge ended up ruling against me because of the statutes of limitations. She did demolish, she did during her one, they basically legally kidnapped my daughter from me. Mm-hmm. And then from 7 years old, the ironic thing when I'm in family court, obviously she's still technically married. So my attorney had to serve Larry Pott. That was the first time I ever met the man in my entire life. He shows up to the proceedings with his new girlfriend, which is now his wife. Her name's Lisa Pott, and she's pregnant with 2 twin daughters. So they basically stripped me from all of my parental rights when my daughter was 7 years old. They granted it to Larry Pott. He received child support from the mother, along with some other major financial aspects, because he found out during the time, 11 years that they were married, there was 4 properties that were purchased that he had no idea existed. So he went from living in an apartment to living in a multi-million-dollar home, getting child support from my daughter with this new woman and wife. And then they started basically the parental alienation. They started telling my daughter she has no family, no grandma and grandpa in Arizona. So my daughter started getting this brainwashing techniques constantly from both her biological mother, and I don't even know if you could call it the stepmother, because she's not a stepmother, right? She has no relation to my daughter. She has no blood relation at all, zero. So, so this Lisa Pott, ends up just treating my daughter just horribly. They took her door off of her room. They had tracking devices on my daughter.
Yeah.
Michael, let me ask you
they were abusing my daughter.
Yeah.
Physically, emotionally, mentally, for 8 years. Sorry. And I know this for a fact because I have all the records. I have all my daughter's therapist reports. I have all the police reports. I have every aspect. That's why these people they will not, in this court, it took me to the Supreme Court to get justice for my family. And, I'm proud that this law is going to, it is law. It's a precedent case that it's going to be able to help other people from being silenced. And, it took a long time for justice, but I did it, and I have to give credit to, I have a new family now. I have a beautiful, we're not married because we won't get into this marriage system after seeing what we have. We have 3 kids. We've been together 11 years. And, Danette, the mother of my children now, I got to give everything to her because she's lived through hell for 11 years. It takes a strong person to stand by somebody that's going through the horror, and it just continued to snowball. I lost my daughter in family court, did everything I could to be in her life. I never saw my daughter again after 7 years old. And then September 10th came in 2012. The year prior to that, I knew when my daughter got a little bit older that I was going to be able to communicate with my daughter via social media. My son was born. I reached out to my daughter on Facebook. She had a Facebook thing. And ironically, the person that answered my Facebook was the stepmother, right? And now that I know why, she had all these tracking devices on my daughter. So she was, controlling everything about her. And on September 10th, I got a call. I was living in Scottsdale, Arizona at the time, from my sister. And she basically told me, Audrie committed suicide. Sorry.
Good, brother.
So had to find out about my daughter's death on Facebook. And I reached out to Audrie's mom, and ironically, the same stepmother responds back via that phone call and was blaming me that because of I had contacted her that had pushed her over the edge and that she had committed suicide. My daughter ended up hanging herself in the shower.
Yeah.
And they were blaming me. So I took that guilt for, I think, 7 months. And then 7 months later, I'm watching TV and my daughter comes out on CNN on national news. So they basically were saying that she was sexually assaulted at a party and that she was cyberbullied and raped. And that's what drove her to commit suicide. So I knew it was a complete lie, right? Mm-hmm. Because when this party, ironically, I believe God, I'm very spiritual, I'm coming in, next week is the week my daughter got assaulted, and Labor Day weekend. And I just lost my thought. Um,
Michael, I watched the documentary, and the documentary very much details a normal high school girl with a normal family, with a normal life, who gets sexually assaulted, and it was shortly thereafter that the suicide happened. But after hearing your side of the story, it sounds like Audrie was going through a lot more than what the
oh
documentary
my God. Well, the ironic thing is these parents or so-called parents,
Mm-hmm.
they didn't even know this happened till 7 months after my daughter, after this party. So this happened Labor Day weekend. The story didn't come out nationally until April.
Mm-hmm.
So for 7 and 8 months, this story didn't even exist, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it was cyberbullying. It was a big thing, and it just kept taking off. I mean, I live in Nevada now. I still have my place in the Bay Area. I'm in high tech. I've been a high tech recruiter in Silicon Valley for over 30 years now. I'd wake up to my daughter in the paper for years. This story just never stopped. It went from People, it went to Rolling Stone magazine. It just kept growing and growing. And then ironically, it was just the way these people were profiting off of my daughter's tragedy, right?
Mm-hmm.
These people that were supposed to be protecting my daughter, they did everything. It's like they just took over her whole image, right, on who she was and what she was about, right? That's my daughter. That's my child, right? Nobody's ever going to take that from me,
Right.
and they tried to do it, right? And I can tell you, they came very, very close, because as you know, it takes a lot of money. I mean, this last lawsuit that I've had for anti-SLAPP is 6 figures, right? I mean, it's not, just to file an anti-SLAPP lawsuit cost me over $50,000 just to file it and get the pleadings to go forward, right?
Right.
There's not a lot of people that have that type of money, and we've been broke now for 10 years. I had to use every cent, everything that I've made. I've been fortunate enough that I make pretty good money, for what I do. But man, it's been a complete struggle. And then just having to deal with, the legislation that has taken place that protected these people in this false narrative. That's been.
Yeah, you're a long time family rights advocate, parental rights advocate. You've been doing this a long time, and I know you've heard this best interest of the child. They bounce that around, and when it's convenient for them. But you going through family court, going through this process, what consideration at all was given to Audrie's best interest versus just this 2-year statute of limitations?
It all comes down to money, right?
You're right.
It really, there's no, you will never get justice in family court if you do not have money. It has to change. I mean, I'm a firm believer that it has to, because we're destroying our kids. I don't want these laws to affect my children when they get bigger.
Do you know what Audrie was told? Was Audrie ever told that you were not her father?
Oh yeah, absolutely. They took every aspect. But the problem that they always had that nobody ever knew, because is my daughter was communicating with my niece, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they grew up together. They're 3 months apart, right? Mm-hmm. That was her. She was using other people's phones to communicate with my niece. So I knew what was going on, right? Mm-hmm. It wasn't like they never knew that. I knew it. I just couldn't do anything about it, because I talked to my attorney. He says, you're going to get a restraining order against you. You're just going to ruin your life. You're going to ruin your career. You got to wait till she's 18, right? To get her back.
So Mr. Pott was involved in raising of Audrie whatsoever up until age 7. But when he found out there was money attached to maybe being her legal father, is that when Mr. Pott showed interest in actually being her legal father, or being?
Well, he had to come in the case because they were legally married.
Right.
Right. I had to bring him in from ground level.
You had to.
Right, from the first case, but he didn't understand. As the first thing you do is financial disclosures, right? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, he was shocked when he found out of all these properties, right? The property that I met Audrie's mom in when she was 5 months old is Lower Pacific Heights, right? in San Francisco. That's a very, very expensive place to live, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we had these hidden places that he never knew about, right? Obviously, and I know this because when I lost my case, I ended up having to sit through the hearings of their divorce. Right? I'm sitting there going, why the hell you guys just ripped my daughter away from me?
Yeah.
And now you're making me sit here through the proceedings of these monsters, financial, I don't know what word you want to call it, right? It's
Right.
just deceitful. It's just, this whole thing has been not about truth, not in any sense of the aspect, right? That's why they were so protective to try to destroy me.
Mm-hmm.
And discredit my credibility, right? And you can't now. I got the Supreme Court that says you can't do it, right? There's no higher court you could go to now.
Right.
So I'm finally blessed that I could speak the truth. I know the truth, and they know that I know the truth, right? From every single aspect of it, from police reports to my daughter's therapist reports of being reported to CPS because of all the stuff that was going on. It's a tragedy in itself, right?
Right.
And then you get this movie, and then they become this. They were going to our public schools, right? Going to our public schools and preaching this lie to our children, right? I mean, how do people sleep like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're going to like you're some role model. You're no role model.
So in the lawsuit, they're accusing you of trying to make money off of Audrie's name. But how much money do you know that they've made since Audrie's death?
Well, first of all, I've never made a cent.
Right. They're
Right?
accusing you,
And I'll never make a cent off of my daughter's tragedy. Right?
but they were accusing you of that, weren't
Yeah. Oh, they had to. That's the lawyer calling me a sperm donor. That's the lawyer. That's a deflection on trying to deflect, right? They've always had this deflection, right?
they? Right.
You can't do. I'm Chinese and Mexican, right? You look at Lawrence Pott and Sheila Pott and what's the so-called Lisa Pott. She's not even a stepmother, right? And Eric had it. She's claiming she owns my daughter's images. That image was the one we just beat him in the Supreme Court on, right? That image right there, she doesn't own that, right?
So that's an interesting twist. You said that,
she owns nothing. She couldn't even pick up my daughter. If my daughter was alive, she couldn't even pick up my daughter from school, right? She claims she's the CEO of my daughter's Audrie Pott Foundation, right? Well, they made over $2 million off of her death. They hid my daughter's gravesite from me. So I had to walk cemeteries for 2 years trying to find where my daughter was buried.
Oh,
right? They hid her in this little cemetery that's with these prestigious people like Thomas Kincaid, the major painter. There's Monument. It's a private cemetery tucked in the middle of the mountains in Saratoga, right? And after all this happened, I finally got an anonymous call from somebody in Saratoga that told me where I was at. I took my son there. I've only been there once. And I was horrified what I saw, right? My daughter didn't even have a headstone. She had a piece of tin with tape, like an animal in the ground. That's how they buried my daughter. After making all of this, and I have pictures of it, right? After making all these, this was 2.5 years after my daughter's death, right? That's what these people are. It's never been about Audrie. It's been about money. It's been about greed, right? And I know it because I have everything, right? I've kept every paper that I've had from all this litigation over 19 years. I have a garage full of everything, right? That backs every statement that I make. And they know that, right? And now I don't really care because you know what? I've established law that preserves my daughter's legacy, and it's going to help families and it's going to help children. And to me, that's worth its weight in gold. You can never have enough money, right?
Right.
So, I don't know. This foundation has been going on. I don't know, what type of money they have, but you know what? We're going to find out. We're going to find out because now that I've won this case, I'm going after them for malicious prosecution. I'm going after those attorneys that that knew what they were doing to try to maliciously prosecute me, right? And I'm starting with the one that they've got right now.
And that's a good idea, because when I was reading the case, it's one aspect that they had to show was that at the time of her death, that her name was of some sort of monetary value at the time of her death. Which at the time of her death, the documentary obviously wasn't out. I mean, there was no international publicity that was given to her. They knew that at the time they made these allegations. And you also had to make money off of her name. You have not. So there were a lot of allegations that were made that they knew to be false at the time that they made anyway. So, and that's the people watching this. There is a lot of abuse by lawyers. There's abuse of the system. And, you made a comment. You said, I was unlucky enough to draw a judge who was involved in a civil case. A lot of this justice is tied to what judge is assigned to your case. So you've seen you've finally seen the good side, which is far few in between, but you've seen the bad and the ugly side of family law. You've been on the receiving end of the bad side this entire time. So people watching this, you have to understand, sometimes you say, well, you know what, I'm going to hire an expensive, high-powered attorney. That doesn't mean that attorney's going to do the right thing or that you're going to win your case, because justice, like you said, it depends on how much money you have, but it also depends on who you are.
Yeah. Yeah, I was laughing because I was talking to a good friend, dear friend of mine, Betsy, today, and I said, it took me 19 years to become a plaintiff. Right? And I laugh in a good thing, because you know what? I mean, it's literally, I've been a defendant for 19 years and now I'm a plaintiff, right? So I'm going to do the good things. I'm not vengeful in any aspect towards this, I'm going to do what is justice and right for my kids,
Mm-hmm.
because these families, especially Larry Pott, they should have never received a dime. Right? In the state of California and the nation, there's never been one case ever in the history that a non-biological heir was able to sue for wrongful death.
Mm-hmm.
Ever. Right? So it's been fraud from the very, very beginning. And I know that for a fact. Guess what they put on my daughter's death certificate? Her nationality.
What?
Mexican.
Really?
Right. Larry signed off on Mexican. And the reason they did that, this is before all this happened, right? When she died, is because she was an organ donor. So they have to know the ethnicity of that for the organs, because it could damage somebody else that's getting those organs, right? So they put the right, my daughter's death certificate says Caucasian and Mexican, right? It's Larry Pott's not Mexican, and he signed off on that form. Right. So this fraud has been going on for a long, long time. That's just one proven document right there. Right.
Right. So, well, back when you were going through this, when Audrie was 7 years old, did the court know? The court was aware of the fact that Mr. Potts was not the biological father, that you indeed were, but
absolutely.
Okay. So, but it was the 2-year statute of limitations on DNA. Mr. Potts, I assume, even acknowledged, well, I'm not the biological, but I'm going to go ahead and assume that legal.
They've never addressed it. They will never address that question.
Wow.
They'll never address that question because it's fraud, right? I mean, you go back at the statutes of limitations on fraud. I mean, this has been fraud from the very, very beginning of my daughter's life being born, right?
I was telling Eric ahead of time, I've had cases where I've had a biological father, and then I've had a legal father, and there's not a single time where I haven't got the legal father on the phone. And usually they say, you know what, we're going to set this aside. We're going to do what's best for this child. It doesn't sound like Mr. Potts had her best interest at heart at all. You can't go wrong with the truth. You can't go wrong.
I could tell you the abuse that I've got from,
wow.
I mean, my daughter recording him in drunken rages before her tragedy, right?
Oh my God.
I mean, there is a lot of horrible stuff that I haven't had the stomach to even read through, right? Because it's so far off. When you see these people posing in front of People magazine or, on TV, and it's like, I don't get it, right? But they never, ever imagined that I was going to be able to do what I did. And I don't, last Wednesday, man, I was I haven't slept in a long time. I've had PTSD for a long time. I'm taking some therapy now to address, just the damage that it does to a human being, right? I mean, I'm lucky to be alive, and I know that. And if it wasn't for, beautiful Danette and my beautiful children that I have on this earth right now, I don't think I'd be here.
Yeah.
That's what endured me. And then having a beautiful family, my mom and my dad, and I was determined. I was never going to give up. I was never going to let somebody take my daughter's name, image, and likeness from me. I'm her dad.
That's right.
And to me, that's, I mean, everything's been vindicated now. And now I just got to sit back and I got one of the best attorneys in the country.
Good.
That he's been there for, he's just been an amazing, he's just an amazing attorney. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll let him do his work and let him take me where I need to get taken right now. And, my goal is to, get some security in my kids. Right. I've had no money for 10 years.
Yeah.
Right. No vacations, no nothing. Right. Everything's been going in litigation. Everything's been going in the courts. Just surviving. Right. Trying to get through this. And I'm just grateful that, my family has now finally been vindicated. And, and it states one of the things that I wanted in that brief, that we had is I'm her biological father. I'm not this man claims to be, or I'm her biological father. Right. Mm-hmm. And they've never once addressed that. They won't address that. Right.
Right.
So speaking about that, Michael, so earlier today, I actually got to hear from that foundation. I've received emails. We got stuff in Facebook telling us to take this down, not to do it. I just want to say hey to them right now because we're doing it.
They control the narrative, right? Which is they don't control the narrative, right?
Right.
No celebrity gets to control the narrative, right? And that was stated in my Supreme Court decision, right? Nobody has that power, right? Mm-hmm. And the First Amendment speech right, it's a powerful thing when when I sat through the litigation and I saw, my attorney crushed their attorney in the 6th District, right? There was a packed full house in that courtroom, and I could tell you everybody that went out there, they knew they were defeated, right? Yeah. And their card was to go to the United States. I wasn't expecting the decision from the Supreme Court till September 4th, which is ironically, which is kind of scary, is the time that they assaulted my daughter, right? All these dates have came out 19 years later to the date of her tragedy, right? We're coming to a week from when her tragedy started, right? And these boys, they were 15, they did wrong, but Audrie grew up with these boys. These weren't strangers to her. She grew up with them from adolescence all the way through, right? They were friends. They were hanging out. They were in an unsupervised home with a full liquor cabinet and parents that were non-existent, right? Yeah. Audrie's mom wasn't even in the state when this happened, when this party was going on. And who leaves their daughter at 15 years old in a house for a weekend on Labor Day and never checks up on her?
I was going to ask you that. Having the information you have right now, you have the therapist records, you have where CPS was called. And this is going to be a difficult question, but you look at the effects that all this litigation, you being taken out of her life, the effects that it had on Audrie, that when this happened, do you think that she had the support system, the coping?
She had nowhere to go. She was with mom, with the boyfriend that she took off with me. There's innuendos that he was making passes at my daughter, right? The man that Sheila's with, right?
Wow.
There's domestic violence calls going left and right on both households, right?
Right.
I mean, there is abuse going on throughout, right? This is going on years and years and years and years, taking my doors off of her room, mom telling her, do you know why you don't look like us? You know, that's a kind of mental abuse that they were doing to a child 7 years old. You know, the day my daughter committed suicide, my daughter's mom left her in the bathroom by herself, crying, and would not. She called her at 11:30. She didn't come pick her up till like 4:00. So she left my daughter in the bathroom stall crying because of all this that was going on, right? What kind of mom does that? Right? My daughter didn't have a chance. She didn't have a relief, right? She didn't have a home to go to, right?
Yeah.
There was abuse going on both sides of her household, you know, and shame on Netflix, shame on Bonnie Cohen, shame on all those people knew of this, right?
Wow.
I was talking to these documentary filmmakers when they were making this film, right?
Yep.
They went with the narrative of the state senators on television and establishing this Audrie's Law. And, you know, you have this Lisa Pott going around saying my daughter wasn't raped. My daughter's photos weren't shared on the internet, right? It never went this cyberbullying stuff. That's all a complete lie.
So Netflix knew about this before they even made the documentary. There was no needing to come back.
I can tell you what, you know, how much they've made. I don't know on this documentary. You know, I told you the rights of that film were between $7 and $10 million. Netflix paid for 2 years on a story that's completely false, right? And then the ironic thing is, you got 2 weeks ago Daisy Coleman. Now she committed suicide.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, Daisy committed suicide?
She just committed suicide 2 weeks ago.
Oh my God, dude. I did not know that.
And she would have been the exact same age of Audrie, 23 years old. Right? And there's a lot of holes in that story. You know, I'm not here to judge. I'm not saying stuff, but there was a reason why those boys weren't prosecuted, right? So, you know, there's you know, there's a lot of things right now. You know, I support, you know, cyberbullying. I support all of that. I have children, right? I mean, but I refuse to support something that's so damaging that's going to affect our kids. You can't build on a lie, right? You cannot build on a lie, right? No matter what you do, sooner or later that lie is going to come forward, right? And unfortunately for the Potts, their day has come, right? It's taken. We've suffered now for these last 8 to 10 years, man, have been horrific for my family. Just absolutely horrific. You know,
that's been my problem with the media for the past decade. It seems like we report on what's sensational, not necessarily the facts. What's going to make people tune in? How sensational can we get? And we do not have real media. We do not have real journalism anymore. It's the whole reason I wanted to start this, because nobody talks about what we're going through. And unfortunately, if you didn't have shows like this, and I saw some local, you know, news outlets did get on there, but stories like yours would just be completely lost, because the story that we heard over here that was so sensational, that's the one we want to buy. That made us feel, you know, like something was being done about it. Now we know the whole story. And unfortunately, when those stories are showed, there's people that are going to believe that narrative no matter what comes out after that. Because they saw it on that documentary. It's true.
Yeah. That's a unfortunate issue. You know, what really worries me is even today, Audrie's mom was at Los Gatos High School, I believe, 2.5 weeks ago, because now all these girls are now saying that the football team had sexually assaulted them years back, and they're trying to get this big movement. You know, the damage that it does to our boys, our young men in life, is there's no due process, right? You come out with that rape allegation with this Title V or whatever the heck that is, there's no due process, right? Your son is automatically expelled. Even if he's innocent, right?
Right.
So we really need, we're running into territory where we're giving a message to our innocent girls, right? That maybe get into the Me Too movement or some type of movement of information that they've seen on TV, or they've seen like my daughter's film, right? That gives them inspired to go after these boys, right? But you can't do that to our innocent kids, our innocent boys, right? You got to give them due process, right? And right now, the way that law is set up, your boy, your son gets accused for rape. Good luck. He's expelled. He loses his college. He loses everything, right? You're guilty until you're proven innocent, right? And that's not right, you know?
Talking about the laws, how have the legislators, have they been receptive to your?
Oh, well, absolutely not. So, as you know, California is the biggie, right? They probably get the most money out of anybody from Title 4D or whatever funding, right? So the funding aspect of overcoming that, because the state gets, you know how that is. I'm not an expert at that, Melissa, but you know, Title 4D funding, the state, they get every dollar. I mean, you're talking, you know, probably $60 million the state of California gets for under divorce, right? Under Title 4D. That's
just child support. Title 4 is just child support.
Yeah. So, you know, I would say they've been receptive to a point, but nobody's there. Legislation to change anything to do with family law has not been touched since 2010. There hasn't been one law or anybody trying to do it. Yeah. Right. So that kind of tells you, you know, you're going to have to get these other states to build, you know, like I know like Kentucky got shared parenting laws. I mean, the more states we get, then we're going to be able to get the big ones, right? California, right? So it's going to take time. I've learned justice doesn't happen overnight. It never will. Neither does change, right? It takes, unfortunately, it takes people like me that have to take the gauntlet in their lifetime. You know, maybe it'll change in my children's lifetime, because it isn't quick. I wish it was quick.
Well, injustice is quick, and it doesn't have to be that way. There's a lot of laws that need to be changed that our lawmakers just simply won't address. But you're right, change doesn't happen overnight, but it darn sure seems injustice does sometimes.
Yeah.
So there needs to be more people like you who are taking the bull by the horns. And this is a very emotional, family court's emotional, but it's set up to be that way, because when you prey on someone's emotions, they will do anything to save their children, save their family, which means give up everything they have. And it devastates and it breaks people. But there has to be strong people like you that stay in the game and grab the bull by the horns and force change, you know, and we all do it in our own ways. And I tell you, Michael, I don't know that I would have the intestinal fortitude to go through what you've gone through and still stay standing and still be swinging. So, you know, Godspeed to you. You are a unicorn. You're one of a kind. And I tell you what, your daughter was lucky to have you. If she didn't have you that first 7 years, there's no telling. There's no telling. But, you know, I think everyone is convinced that had you been allowed to stay in her life, even just stay in her life, then she probably
would have never happened.
Never would have happened.
It never would have happened, you know. And the sad thing is that nobody's taking responsibility, right? It's the boy's fault. It's this, you know. You know, I've personally met with the parents of these boys that assaulted my daughter, right? And there's always been forgiveness in my heart, because I've been a 15-year-old boy before, right? We've all been there, right? And to you know, these boys and their family got railroaded. I mean, from the very beginning. I mean, I don't know if there's a video on YouTube, you can see the sheriff that investigated my case, and right now she's getting indicted.
Oh my God.
For you know, concealed weapons permits to get reelected. You know, Sheriff Smith. I approached her when she was running in reelection, one-on-one, right? And I have it up on YouTube, and you'll watch it. You know, there's been cover up at every level that you could possibly imagine to protect this story, this false narrative.
So, Michael, I want to ask you a question really quick. So, in the documentary, instead of showing these boys and who they were, they got these little animations like this right here.
Yeah.
What was, and from what I was seeing, that was part of the agreement that.
Well, what people don't realize is that these boys, so there was 13 attorneys that were involved with the 3 boys, right? So there was probably 15 attorneys involved in this case. This case was scheduled to go to trial, and they subpoenaed all of my records, right? Ironically enough, throughout my daughter's investigation, when all this stuff was going on, not one police officer ever came and showed up at my door, right? I was totally discarded. Nobody wanted to know what was going on with my daughter, right? So the cover up goes way, way beyond just this Pott family, right? There's a lot of people that are at higher places that have taken an active realm for their own advantage, for re-election purposes, and the list goes on, right? That utilizes my daughter's tragedy to get something off of it, to gain off of it, right? It's just unfortunate, that it's, and I know it because I have all the records to show it, right? And like I said, right now, my next stage is just to let my attorney do what we're going to do. I'm going to go full steam ahead with this malicious prosecution lawsuit. And this is not about money. It's never going to be about money. It's going to be about justice, and make sure that nobody ever gets to do this to an innocent child.
Yeah.
My daughter should never have been exploited in the national media. She should have never. She was a 15-year-old, beautiful, beautiful little girl, right? She should have never became this. The adults are the ones that made what my daughter is thought of now, right? It's not who my daughter was, Yeah.
So what I was
for help.
Where I was going with that, from what I was picking up, that was a part of the agreement that they would do that interview for Netflix.
Oh yeah, which is
why.
Well, and then ironically, one of the boys' attorneys, that was involved in the criminal prosecution, because don't forget, when this first started, they were going after these boys for murder. They were trying to get these boys for murder, right? They were trying to get them to be tried as adults, right? That's when it first started. These boys were going to just get fried, right? And then it's like the O.J. Simpson trial, right? You had the media gauntlet that was doing everything, right? It was just like the O.J. Simpson trial, right? Same thing. It was just the district attorney was involved with all the papers and all the publicity, and it's just turning that wheel, right? It's just man, my daughter got exploited at so many levels, at so many levels. And I'm just proud now that you can't stop me from saying the truth. Right. Right.
And there's a part of me that kind of puts myself in your shoes, knowing I haven't seen my daughter in a couple of years. It's like, what if one day some stepfather came in and, this was my story? This could happen to a lot of the guys that listen to this podcast, so many of them. And that's why, it might not be happening to you, but it can happen to you, and it can happen to your sons. I'm still blown away by the whole 2-year statute of limitations in California with the paternity test. Is that still active?
It's still active.
Oh my God.
Yeah. I've never, I was full blown with that. I had got the right person to pull it forward, but with all this litigation, I had to just take what I could do, and the most important was to preserve my daughter's truth and legacy. That's all I wanted, was to really, really get the truth. And I just put the whole puzzle together literally over the last 3 months, right? Where I got everything now, right? I had little portions, but now I have the complete puzzle, right?
Right.
All the pieces. I know all the actors. I know everything that went on. I know everything, right? So to me, and then getting the justice from the Supreme Court and establishing new law that's going to help our kids and help families from being silenced, because, you know, Melissa, so many people are using it. Facebook, that he did a post and you can't, you know, they're attacking people from being able to speak their mind or speak the truth, right?
Right.
That's in the Constitution, right? First Amendment, you know.
Yep.
And people have forgotten about that. Judges have forgotten about that.
Yeah,
right?
definitely. Yeah, they have.
You know, that's a protected, you know, it's a liberty interest that should be protected, you know. And I just think this is bringing it. This case is bringing it from Facebook to everything's mentioned in this case now, that this case law, that people are going to be able to utilize it to help them, you know, and that was important to me.
Michael, I'd like to get you hooked up with Carnell Smith. He goes around. He's, I think, got paternity fraud passed in 12 different states. This is something, you know, your case.
That was part of my thing. I had 2 years of statutes of limitations and paternity fraud. Those were the two aspects that we were looking at legislation back in 2016, but I just couldn't. I had to go with the path, and I didn't have a choice, because I was getting hit with the lawsuit. Anyone you could ever think of for breathing, I was getting hit with the lawsuit. So,
my brother, I'm telling you, this story's got so many twists and turns. I'm sorry you had to go through this. I am, but there is a part of what we go through, and I talk about this often, is turning your pain into purpose. That pain that you went through in Audrie's death, it won't be in vain. Take this and let's use it to make sure nobody ever has to experience this again. And I can't say enough how sorry I am to what happened to your little girl. And I'd like to say, you know, to the family of Daisy Coleman, that was news I didn't know about. And
yeah, I mean, it shook me. You know, I don't know them, and you know, obviously they were involved with the Potts with their story, and you know, and you know, I don't have any you know, I feel sorry for a mom, because I know that pain. I know what it feels like to lose a child, right? It's a really, really hard pain to live with, you know. I'm just happy I'm taking the steps that I need now to heal, right? I finally got, I'm finally sleeping at night. So what? You know, I so many years I just didn't even know how to sleep anymore, you know, because it's just so overwhelming. You can't turn it off, and then you have the media even more, that it just, I mean, I'm surprised the story still goes on, right? It just, every single time that I think it's ending, it has another leg that it's going to go even more, right? It just keeps going on and on and on and on. So I think with me speaking out now, I think an end to what has been happening to my daughter, and really bring out the truth, and you know, for a lot of different reasons, right?
Right.
It's important that my daughter's legacy is based upon the truth, and that's what it's always been about.
One last thing for you, my man. When the foundation reached out to me today, one of the things they had said is, Sheila's even said in press conferences, she don't even know who the father is.
Which is, well, that just shows you the credit. Well, the funny thing is, I call her now Lisa the Chameleon Pott, right? Because she goes on all these, like, these talk shows, and then she'll go and try to protect the narrative. I've caught her maybe 3 or 4 times with fake Facebook accounts where she goes in and talks like somebody else. I think today, Eric, you were saying she was talking that she was Larry Pott.
Said this is
Larry,
Audrie's father.
Larry Pott. That's Lisa Pott. That's a stepmom. That is the chameleon that I call her now. You know, but like I told my sister today, we'll see what really color she is when we get her in the federal lawsuit. You know, because we're going to discover a lot of things that I know that exists, and you know, you do wrong and you do bad to good people, you know, for so long. Someday it's going to come back and get you.
That's right.
And, you know, and I'm just grateful right now at the position I sit as a plaintiff,
Right.
you know, that I'm able to drive this car and just let, you know, I've met so many incredible attorneys, and I'm just blessed. I'm blessed from God that He's given me one of the best people that I could be associated with.
Good.
And as you know, Melissa, that's the game right there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's hard to navigate when you're somebody like me or anybody, and you get into trying to find an honest attorney. You just never know.
That's right.
They're litigating your case behind your back. It's, they're making deals behind your back. It's just, it's to find ethical, and like you, Melissa, my hat's off to you, man. You're a blessing to this movement, being
100%.
an attorney and a woman, and you see it and you fight for it. We don't have, there's not a lot of people that take that.
Nope.
Because it isn't easy, right?
No, it is not easy.
The public attacks you probably get on a daily basis, and because the funny thing, I hate this, we always want to take it into a gender. It's a mom thing or it's a dad thing. It's not about mom or dad, man. It's about our kids.
It is.
Right? It's about establishing and getting good laws that are going to protect our kids for the best interest. If that word even exists, I don't know where that came out in legislation.
Right.
Interest, right? What does that mean? I still don't know what that means.
Nobody knows what it means.
Right? They use it all the time, right? It's always in the papers. It's always in the pleadings. The best interest of the child.
Right.
Well, what the hell does that mean?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Before we go, let me show you my little kids. They've been
okay. Awesome.
Stephanie.
So everybody, I hope you have. It's hard to say enjoyed tonight's podcast because it's not enjoyment, but I hope this was enlightening and it shows you a little glimpse of what can go on. You can't judge a book by its cover because. I mean, by the time Michael reached out to me earlier this week and started giving me details about this case, Melissa, I was like, what's going on here? But, it's so easy. I was sitting there putting myself in this guy's shoes. I was like, that could be me.
That's right. All right. I see somebody coming in the room.
Yeah.
No, and if people haven't seen the documentary, I do, after watching our show, go see the documentary, and I think you're going to see a lot of warning signs. I know that Sheila Potts, when she was being interviewed on Netflix, she came across, I think, that maybe as a decent mother, but there's a lot of holes in her story. There's a lot.
This is Connor.
Hey, Connor.
9. Say hi. That's Melissa, and that's Eric.
Hey,
I think,
Connor.
Eric, you're in Georgia?
Yes, sir.
And Melissa, you're in?
Alabama.
She's in Alabama. And this is Bethany Taylor.
Hey,
We named her with Audrey. Audrey Taylor was my daughter. This is Bethany Taylor.
Oh.
Hi.
Hey.
Hi. Hi. Tell them what grade you're in.
I'm in kindergarten now.
Oh.
And who's your teacher?
Who's your teacher?
Miss Thomas.
And who's your second teacher?
I don't have a phone.
We're homeschooling.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Oh, she's adorable.
Hey.
It's good to meet you.
I have a 3-year-old too, but she's sound asleep.
Gotcha.
And the amazing thing is she's a splitting image of Audrey.
Really?
I mean, you could put two pictures together and you wouldn't know who's who when you're looking at the same age.
Yeah.
So,
wow.
Well, Michael, it's something about the eyes and the tan. I have it with my girls. I couldn't deny them if I wanted to.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, my mom was. We get the Asian look from my mom. My mom passed away, unfortunately, in November. She had an aneurysm, so I lost my mom in November. So I'm taking care of my dad now. So he lives with us. But yeah, this is my family. I'm blessed. This is what keeps me moving.
Well, brother,
thank you so much. I know you probably kept you longer than what you guys usually do.
It's okay.
No, it's fine. tell everybody where they can keep up with this case, Michael, and where they can receive updates if they're interested in hearing.
Yeah, I mean, go to my Facebook page. Ironically, Lisa Pott, she got one of my other Facebook pages. She put like 5 or 6 fake DCMA claims with Facebook, and
Oh my goodness.
they shut my whole account down. We're going to get it back. We're right now doing this is going to be part of the litigation that we're looking at, but so I'm not worried about that. But you can contact me via Facebook. You know, my email address is Michael, MICHAEL _Lazarin, LAZARIN. And my cell phone is 510-693-9602. So if there's anything I could do to help, you know, if I don't have the answers, I could probably refer you to somebody that could get you some type of answer, you know.
Okay.
All right, brother. Well, I tell you what, thank you again so much for having the bravery to come and speak about this. And
yeah.
All right.
Thank
Mike.
you. Bless you both. You guys have a beautiful evening. Stay safe out there.
Bye,
Will do.
Bethany.
Say bye. Say bye.
Bye.
Bless you both.
Thank you for joining us tonight. We are fighting for the rights of parents worldwide. If you want to help support our podcast and for us to continue this mission, please join us at patreon.com/dadtalktoday. You will find us on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, CloutHub, Parler, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Spotify, the podcast app, Google, Apple Podcasts. We're a little bit of everywhere. And guys, every time you like and subscribe, you help us continue this mission. Thank you, and we will see you